They laughed when he stitched a crocodile on his blazer. They thought it was a joke, but what started as a nickname turned into a billion-dollar legacy. You won't believe how one small logo on one man's chest rewrote the rules of fashion forever. This is the story of how René Lacoste turned identity into empire. A crocodile logo on his shirt started as a joke. No one saw it coming. It would become a billion-dollar brand. You won't believe this. But one of the most iconic fashion brands on the planet started with a tiny crocodile. No fancy investors, no marketing plan, just a joke between friends that accidentally rewrote branding history. Imagine this: a tennis champion walks onto the court with a stitched animal on his chest. It wasn't just fashion, it was audacity. And no one saw it coming. Back then, logos weren't cool. They weren't even a thing. Wearing a visible symbol on your clothes, that was unheard of. It broke every unspoken rule of style. But that's what makes this story different. Because when one man took that risk, he didn't just launch a brand, he started a movement. This changed everything we know about personal branding. Long before branding was a buzzword, it started out small. A crocodile stitched just for fun became a conversation piece. People talked, people noticed, and little by little, the man behind the joke realized he was onto something bigger. What really happened next was a masterclass in seeing value where no one else does. There's a hidden lesson here. Sometimes the best opportunities look like a prank until they pay your bills. The secret behind it? It wasn't the logo, it was the confidence to stand out. While others played safe, he played smart and bold. Think about your own life. How many jokes have you brushed off that might have been your breakthrough? What no one tells you is that most revolutions don't start loud. They start weird, unexpected, slightly ridiculous. Here's the kicker. Today, that stitched crocodile is worth billions. It sits on shirts, shoes, and fragrances across the globe. But it could have ended here if he had just laughed it off and moved on. Instead, he leaned in. He embraced the joke. And that single decision flipped the script. It turned a laugh into a legacy. And here's where it gets even better. Because behind that bold logo was a man no one expected, not a businessman, not a designer, just an athlete obsessed with winning on and off the court. The truth revealed itself not in what he wore, but in who he was becoming. And once you meet him, you'll understand why this story still matters. Who was René Lacoste, famous French tennis champion from the 1920s, known for his discipline, strategy, and obsession with winning, promised his father he'd become a champion in 5 years, and did. Before the shirts, before the logo, there was just a boy with a promise. René Lacoste wasn't born a legend, he built himself into one. When most kids his age were chasing fun, René was chasing perfection. He told his father he'd become a world champion within 5 years. Sounds crazy, right? But here's the shocking story. He actually did it. The truth revealed: his discipline was his superpower. He wasn't the strongest or the fastest on the court. In fact, some called his playing style boring. But what no one tells you is that boring wins games when it's backed by strategy. René studied his opponents like a scientist. He broke down their habits, analyzed every swing, every weakness. It wasn't just tennis, it was chess in motion. And he always thought 10 moves ahead. You won't believe this, but René wasn't even supposed to be an athlete. He had asthma. Doctors told him to stay away from intense sports. But that only lit the fire deeper. Instead of playing the victim, he played smarter. Every match became a war of tactics, not just talent. His mindset: if I can't outpower you, I'll outthink you. And he did again and again. There's a hidden lesson here. Don't wait to be the best. Decide you're going to be and make it true. René didn't just dream. He scheduled his rise. 5 years, one goal. And while others trained when they felt like it, he trained like it was life or death. That's what separates the great from the forgotten. Obsession, backed by action. By the time he reached his prime in the 1920s, René Lacoste had become a machine. 7 Grand Slam titles. Olympic medalist, but even more impressive, He did it all while reinventing how tennis was played. His precision, his mental stamina changed the sport forever. The nickname the Crocodile wasn't just catchy, it was earned, ruthless, patient, calculated, and just when the world thought Reigns' story was about tennis, he switched the game because the same mindset that made him a champion, he would soon use to disrupt a different court entirely fashion. But before we get to that twist, you need to understand how the Crocodile became more than just a nickname. The origin of the Crocodile nickname: American press nicknamed him the Crocodile for his tough, relentless playing style. The name stuck and became part of his identity. It all started with a bet. One day, René Lacoste made a casual wager with the French Davis Cup team captain. If he won an upcoming match, he'd earn a crocodile leather suitcase. He didn't win that day, but something strange happened. An American journalist watching his stubborn, never give up style wrote that he fought like a crocodile. That phrase stuck like glue. No one saw it coming, but that offhand comment would define him forever. The Crocodile wasn't just a cool nickname. It captured everything René was on the court: unshakable, calm, and lethal. He didn't thrash, he waited, he studied, then he struck. That relentless focus, it scared his opponents. And slowly, the world started seeing him as more than just a tennis player. The truth revealed is that René didn't resist the label. He embraced it. While most athletes ran from animal nicknames afraid of being mocked, he wore it like armor. What no one tells you is that sometimes identity finds you when you least expect it. But the real genius? He turned that identity into a personal brand long before people used the word brand. It almost didn't work. The nickname could have faded like a trend. But René leaned into it. He laughed about it publicly. He even joked with friends about being the Croc, and that openness gave it power. Audiences loved it. The media loved it. Soon, fans were chanting it, and every time he stepped on the court, people watched to see what the Crocodile would do next. Here's where it gets even more interesting. Long before Nike had the swoosh, or Jordan had his Jumpman logo, René Lacoste had something bigger meaning. That crocodile wasn't random. It stood for something, for grit, for obsession. For a man who'd rather lose a long than lose a set. And when you stand for something, people remember you. But the story doesn't end with a nickname. In fact, that's where it begins, because the Crocodile wouldn't just stay on paper. It was about to jump onto clothing and change the fashion industry forever. Founding the Lacoste brand in 1933, partnered with André Gillier to create a clothing line. Designed the modern polo shirt, breathable piqué fabric, short sleeves. Merged elegance and performance, instantly popular in tennis. In 1933, René Lacoste made a decision that would ripple through history, not on the court, but at the sewing machine. He partnered with André Gillier, a visionary in textile manufacturing. The goal? To create something that didn't exist yet, a shirt made for champions, but elegant enough for gentlemen. You won't believe this, but they were about to reinvent not just sportswear, but fashion itself. What no one tells you is how intentional every detail was. René didn't want just any shirt. He wanted function without sacrificing form. So they developed a breathable cotton piqué, something that moved with the body, kept athletes cool, and looked sharp both during and after the match. Short sleeves, soft collar, no starch, revolutionary. It was tennis wear that didn't look like tennis wear. The truth revealed is that this wasn't just a business decision, it was personal. René had spent years sweating in stiff, uncomfortable attire. Now, he had the chance to fix that, to create something better for the next generation of players. It could have ended here as a niche innovation, but what happened next? No one saw coming. The Lacoste polo wasn't just a hit, it became a status symbol. On tennis courts across Europe, players were ditching traditional uniforms for this modern upgrade. And they weren't alone. Actors, businessmen, weekend golfers, they all wanted in. Why? Because this shirt didn't scream luxury, it whispered it. Quiet confidence, clean style. Performance built in. There's a hidden lesson here. Success often comes from solving your own problem first. René didn't ask the market what it wanted, he built what he needed. And in doing so, he created a product that resonated with millions. For anyone building something today, don't chase trends. Chase truth. What's missing from your world? Start there. And just when the Lacoste brand began gaining traction in France, another opportunity knocked, a much bigger one that would take the crocodile far beyond Europe and into the closets of presidents, athletes, and the American dream itself. Massive US expansion in the 1950s, Lacoste partnered with IZOD in America. The polo shirt became a fashion statement among elites and athletes, worn by presidents, celebrities, and students alike. When Lacoste crossed the Atlantic in the 1950s, it wasn't just selling shirts, it was exporting a lifestyle. The brand partnered with IZOD, a savvy American retailer, and suddenly, the crocodile wasn't just French anymore. You won't believe this, but what began as a sports shirt quickly became a symbol of status, success, and sophistication across the US. What really happened was a branding masterstroke. IZOD understood. The American dream and Lacoste fit right in. Country clubs, Ivy League campuses, yacht decks. Everyone wanted that little green logo. It wasn't about being flashy. It was about being in the know, the truth revealed. Wearing Lacoste meant you belonged without having to say a word. Presidents wore it, actors wore it, elite students wore it. Even kids who couldn't pronounce Lacoste saved up just to get their hands on it. This changed everything. Sportswear was no longer just for sweating, it was style. And the crocodile, it wasn't just stitched, it was status. What no one tells you is how much that simple shirt influenced the entire preppy movement in American fashion. It almost didn't work. At first, the price point was too high, the concept too foreign, but IZOD knew the game. They marketed it smart, pairing it with American confidence, casual elegance, and clean design. By the 1960s, Lacoste wasn't competing with sports brands. It was competing with culture and winning. There's a hidden lesson here for entrepreneurs. If your product works locally, it can work globally, but only if you adapt. René's polo didn't change in fabric, but it changed in story. In France, it meant innovation. In America, it meant prestige. Same shirt, different meaning. And that's the secret behind international expansion, translating value into new languages. But as the brand soared through country clubs and boardrooms, something began to shift. The more people wore Lacoste, the more it risked losing what made it special. And what came next would test whether the crocodile could survive the weight of its own success. Brand identity crisis over licensing in the 1980s and 90s diluted the brand. Competitors like Lettigger mimicked the concept. Lacoste struggled to maintain exclusivity and prestige. At the peak of its popularity, Lacoste made a move that seemed smart, but almost destroyed everything. In the 1980s and 90s, the brand began licensing its name left and right. More factories, more countries, more products. Sounds like growth, right? But here's the hidden lesson. Growth without control isn't growth, it's erosion. And the truth revealed itself fast. What no one tells you is how easy it is for prestige to fade. As Lacoste appeared in discount stores and bargain racks, the mystique began to unravel. That iconic crocodile, once a mark of elegance, started showing up on ill-fitting shirts and mass-market lines. It could have ended here. It almost did, because people no longer asked, "Is that Lacoste?" They asked, "Is that real?" Meanwhile, competitors were watching. Lettigger, a cheaper knockoff, hit the market with a tiger logo and a similar shirt. Consumers got confused. The once clear symbol of class was now blurry. The shocking story? Some people even started choosing Lettigger just for the price. It was the beginning of a crisis no one saw coming. René Lacoste had built his legacy on precision, but now the brand felt sloppy. Over-licensing had stretched quality thin and blurred the brand's DNA. The crocodile was everywhere, but that was the problem. When you're everywhere, you're no longer special. Exclusivity isn't about being rare, it's about being respected. And Lacoste was losing that fast. For anyone building a brand today, learn from this mistake. Don't chase short-term gains at the cost of long-term identity. Just because you can expand doesn't mean you should. Ask yourself, will this move honor what the brand stands for or dilute it because once prestige slips? It's hard to get it back, but just when it looked like the crocodile might be relegated to nostalgia, a new chapter began. One fueled by family, legacy, and the decision to fight for the soul of the brand. The truth revealed. Comebacks are possible, but they demand courage, clarity, and a return to what made you great in the first place. Rebirth and reinvention. The Lacoste family bought back control, revamped branding, improved product quality. Focus returned to heritage, luxury, and authenticity. The crocodile had been wounded but not defeated. In the early 2000s, something unexpected happened. The Lacoste family took the brand back. No boardroom politics, no outside investors. Just a bold decision to protect a legacy. You won't believe this, but the comeback didn't start with marketing. It started with humility and a deep look in the mirror. The truth revealed. The family admitted the brand had lost its way. Licensing deals were slashed, quality standards were raised. They didn't try to be louder, they chose to be better. The fabric improved, the stitching got tighter. And slowly, piece by piece, the elegance returned. What no one tells you is that sometimes the only way forward is backward. They brought in new designers but grounded them in the past. Ads no longer screamed for attention, they whispered class, confidence, heritage. Stores were redesigned, not to look modern but timeless. The crocodile was no longer trying to be everything to everyone. It was reclaiming what it once stood for, understated luxury built on real performance. It almost didn't work. Reviving a brand is risky. Consumers are quick to forget, slow to forgive. But Lacoste doubled down on authenticity. They told the story of René again, his victories, his obsession with excellence, the origins of the logo. It wasn't just nostalgia, it was identity repair, and it resonated, especially with a new generation craving substance over hype. There's a hidden lesson here for anyone trying to rebuild after a fall. Don't pivot to what's trending. Return to what's true, whether it's a brand, a relationship, or even your own life. Clarity beats complexity. Lacoste didn't add more. It removed what didn't belong. The result? A brand that felt refined, focused, and proud again. But even as the crocodile regained its place in the fashion jungle, something else began to grow, something more powerful than any single collection or runway show. The legacy, the movement, the symbol, because this wasn't just a comeback. It was the evolution of a global icon. The crocodile legacy, a playful logo, became a global symbol of classy sportswear. Lacoste is now one of the most iconic clothing brands in history. Its value? Billions and still growing. Today, that little green crocodile is more than just a logo, it's a legacy. A symbol that traveled from the courts of Paris to the streets of New York, Tokyo, Sao Paulo. You won't believe this, but what started as a stitch joke now sits alongside the biggest names in luxury: Louis Vuitton, Ralph Lauren, Gucci, and right there Lacoste, with its head high. The shocking story? It never needed loud colors or extravagant designs to compete. It won with elegance, with precision, with consistency. The truth revealed is that class doesn't expire, it compounds. And Lacoste understood that better than most. Decades after its creation, it still represents quiet power, controlled confidence, and refined rebellion. What no one tells you is how many brands have come and gone chasing hype. But Lacoste, it played the long game. While others shouted, it whispered. And ironically, that's what made people lean in. It became a symbol not of wealth but of taste. Not of noise but of substance. A brand that never needed to explain itself. Even today, the numbers are staggering. Lacoste is valued in the billions. It's sold in over 100 countries. It's worn by athletes, artists, entrepreneurs, and everyday people who want to feel like they belong to something timeless. The crocodile, it became more than a logo, it became identity. It became lifestyle, and it still carries a quiet strength René embodied. There's a hidden lesson here. Don't chase popularity, build permanence. If your brand, your work, your name stands for something real, it will outlive trends. The crocodile outlasted competitors not because it was the flashiest, but because it was rooted in truth. And truth always wins in the end. But before we close this story, there's one last twist. One final detail most people miss, because what René Lacoste created wasn't just a product or even a brand. It was a mindset, a belief that elegance and ambition can coexist, that performance doesn't have to shout, and that sometimes one bold move can change the game forever. What began as a joke became a fashion empire. The hidden lesson, sometimes a small, bold move can change the world. He branded a shirt and rewrote branding history. It started with a joke, a crocodile stitched on a blazer, no business plan, no $1 million budget. Just one man owning who he was. You won't believe this. But that single, playful gesture sparked a global movement, a movement that would redefine fashion, branding, and the way we express identity. The truth revealed? Big empires often begin with tiny, almost silly ideas. René Lacoste didn't invent tennis. He didn't invent shirts, but what he did invent was vision. He saw the invisible link between performance and elegance. He believed you could be fierce and refined, strategic and stylish, and that belief changed everything. He didn't just put a crocodile on a shirt. He branded confidence, class, and competitive spirit into a timeless symbol. What no one tells you is that this wasn't luck. It wasn't just good timing. It was courage to be first, to be mocked, to be different. Most people wait for validation before they act. René acted before the world was ready, and that's exactly why it worked. It could have ended here, but it didn't because he refused to play small. There's a hidden lesson stitched into every Lacoste shirt. The things that make you stand out are the things that make you succeed. That weird idea, that quirky trait, that voice telling you to try something bold, listen to it. Because greatness rarely looks like greatness at the beginning. Sometimes it looks like a crocodile on a tennis blazer. He branded a shirt and rewrote branding history. He proved that elegance can roar without raising its voice. That legacy isn't built overnight, but it can begin in one. And if René Lacoste could turn a nickname into a global empire, what's stopping you from turning your own story into something legendary? And maybe, just maybe, the next global icon isn't a logo, a slogan, or a product. Maybe it's you, but to find out, you'll have to take your shot. And it starts with one bold move. So now I have to ask you, what's the crocodile in your story? That small, bold idea you've been ignoring, that detail that feels too weird, too early, too risky, because what no one tells you is that legends don't wait for permission. They make a move and let the world catch up later. You've just seen how one man turned a joke into a legacy. What could happen if you stopped playing safe and finally acted on yours? If this story made you think deeper, if it sparked something real inside you, then don't scroll away. Subscribe now, because here, we don't just tell business stories, we tell the ones that change the way you see the world. And the next one might just change your life.